Croeso! It's Friday, it's 4 o'clock, and it's Dragonheart. The vote is over, and it was a landslide, although Donald Trump is claiming he saw someone in a Nag's Head car park burning 1,800 really great no votes. 3 crates of gin arrived in Wrexham's pubs this week. By coincidence, a consignment of E4 Williams bandwagons arrived in Chester for the locals to jump onto. I miss Chester. We've got a great range of guests today and a bumper 2-hour special about this week's events, and throughout you'll hear clips from Rob and Ryan themselves, plus some fan reactions to Takeover. I'm Mark Griffiths, and I'm joined by Zoom's James Harrison. So let's get cracking. It's time for Dragonheart.
And going back to that parade and having goosebumps and tears streaming down my face for an entire 9 to 10 hours as I got to share in this cathartic experience with the people that I grew up with and the people that I love. That's what's fueling me here. I feel like we can have a version of that parade I saw in 1977 in Wrexham. Only larger. I feel like we can build something to that, and I want to be there for that. I want to be a part of that.
Yeah, so welcome to the show. Can you believe it? This really has happened. James and I have got a couple of hours to mull over exactly what's gone on in what's been a crazy week, really, James, isn't it?
Unbelievable week is the only description you can have, isn't it? Unbelievable.
Have a listen to Spencer Harris. Now, of course, Spencer, well, James, I mean, he's worked exceptionally hard to get this deal to go through, alongside many others, of course, but he's been the man who puts his head over the parapet, and you know, he deserves a pat on the back, doesn't he?
Yeah, there's been some unbelievable work in the background to get this over the line, and for people that put their head over the parapet, they're often there to be criticised, but I think on this, a big shout out to everyone that's done this, particularly Spencer, on what's driven this deal for Wrexham fans.
Hi, my name's Che. I had my reservations prior to the Zoom call about a takeover. However, I think it's fantastic the club's been spoken about on a global level. I think it's a lot more than just football, really. I think it's going to be great for town. I think small towns like ours, when the football club's thriving and doing well, I think the whole town's thriving and doing well. I think it's got great potential for the future.
What was your reaction when you've realised who was making this bid?
Let me take you back to the start and how it happened, because probably a lot of fans won't know how we were approached. So I got a call from the CEO of Portsmouth Football Club back in May, and he asked me, would I be willing to speak to somebody about investment into the football club. So as I always would, inform trust board, but then, as I always would, say yes, because, what we're here to be, we represent the fans. We don't own the club individually. So yes, and he put me in touch with a guy from an investment bank in New York.
Mm-hmm. That was been a shock in itself, I guess. I know Portsmouth have got there's that Disney link, but wow, that's a surprise for a club of our stature, really.
Yeah, I mean, so I got in touch with the people from New York and started, on behalf of the club, started those discussions. And really, the first few weeks was getting to know the people on the other side in terms of the investment bank, and start to talk about Wrexham as a club, what it was like on and off the pitch, and to talk really in detail, not just about the club but the town. And at that stage, all that we knew was that the people who was actually wanted to invest were very famous people, and would be in the view of the investment bank would be brilliant for the future of the football club, and weren't at that stage able to tell us, who it was, due to the level of fame, and they wanted to just get a little bit further down, the track before they did. So we went with it, and we learnt more. We shared a lot, and eventually we got to sign in a non-disclosure agreement, which is a legal agreement that sort of prevents you doing certain things. And they revealed to us that it was in fact Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds.
And your jaws dropped, I assume.
Well, I had actually been on an earlier call, so the people the way in which we structured this as a trust board was we had obviously the trust board sitting over the top of it. We then had a bid team which included Matthew Scott, Gavin Jones, Mark Williams, Rob Parry, who's advised us on these types of matters for a long time, and I, and in the main, it would then be Rob, Parry, and I who would hold most of the discussions, and that's how we structured ourselves, and the some weeks before the reveal of who the people were, we'd had a call with the people in the US, and a guy called Rob was on that call. And from one or two of the things that he said, I was able to do just a little bit of research, and I sort of guessed it was Rob McElhenney.
Yeah.
I didn't know for certain, so I just kept that to myself, because you don't want to make a fool of yourself. But I kept that to myself until when it was actually revealed, and it was, God, you're going to be surprised. It's Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, and well, no, I already knew it was Rob McElhenney, but I played along.
Oh, well, please. We're still a long way at this point, though, from anything being revealed in public, I would assume.
Yes, so we're talking back, that would have been back July, August time, when we got into the NDA stage, and in a normal transaction between two companies, where a community benefit society isn't involved, that level of behind the scenes where nobody knows about it would have gone on for much longer. But with us being community owned, quite rightly, we needed to get into a process by which we would engage with fans much earlier in the process. So what we did, we got to a stage where we got some real understanding of what the high level terms of a proposal to supporters would be, and then of course we went to a first SGM to ask for permission to continue to have those discussions, because a lot of people don't realise this, but the rules of the trust and the rules of all supporter owners clubs, including Portsmouth, by the way, when they were taken over, do actually prevent you from selling the club, because they one of the objects is to keep the club in community ownership. So that's why we had to ask for permission to carry on those discussions, and then of course soon after we'd sort of brought that to fans. When if you remember back, we didn't tell people who the people were. We got a resounding yes, and then quite quickly after that we revealed who they were. But that's an interesting story in its own right.
Well, I'm honest. Before you mentioned that, I must put, at this point, I am struck with fear, because I'm a great fan of the idea of fan ownership, especially clubs at our level, because I don't believe, well, I didn't believe there was such a thing as a fairy godmother. And I thought if there was some local Elton John type person who actually loves the club and wants to put it in, we'd know about them already. So at that point, I'm thinking, no, we don't want other people to invest in us. But you knew, of course, it was that remarkable fairy godmother thing. I mean, it must have been difficult to keep a lid on that.
Yeah, I'd love in this interview to talk a little bit about those guys a bit later on. But I've always been very much of the mind in everything that I've done in my time at the football club is that I will treat this very, very professionally.
Yeah.
And I've always thought about anything at the football club. They're not my secrets; they belong to the football club. So my wife finds out, and when there's an announcement that goes on the website, the people close to me find out at the exact same time as everybody else. So if I keep it in that sort of mind, it means that it means that I can never be accused, and or will always sleep safe at night that no league would ever come from me.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. But we did get to the point, of course, when we did reveal the name, and you guys revealed the name in public, and that was that was quite nice, wasn't it?
Yeah. So there's a story around that in its own right, in that we weren't actually. It was on the night of a game, if you remember, and we got a message to you just before kickoff that this was happening, because you were going to be doing the commentary, and there'd been a call from a reporter to the investment bank in New York, who'd somehow learnt of the names involved. Don't tell me how that came about. I have no idea. So that put us in a bit of a quandary, really. So we had to do a very quick, make some very quick decisions with the guys over in the US. Actually, at that point, we would release the names slightly earlier than what we'd expected to do. So I had some manic couple of hours phoning a lot of stakeholders to let them know in advance, because that's the way you build relationships. So you have to, with some key stakeholders, give people some advance notice of what's coming out, and that's what we did. And then we released the news, and I think a lot of people's jaws dropped at that point.
You're not wrong.
No, I was going to say, before you get to the vote, there was a significant amount of work for a lot of people. So, but I took the lead on putting the information pack together, with the help of others, Mark doing the finance piece, working with Brian on the chairs piece, between Rob and I, putting the context together, and with BDO and Sheridan's, and I sort of did the first pass at the FAQs that was in there, and then got Rob and Sheridan's to have a look over, and and so it went on. So that was quite a weighty document at almost 40 pages. So just getting to that alone, and the version control on that document, and getting that so that we had a something that really fans could look over very carefully, and in a considered and sober way, so that they had something to hang their hat on when they were going to make a decision, and that was getting to that point was really key, because for me the most important thing was getting that opportunity to make that decision to fans. It would have been an absolute travesty and tragedy had we not succeeded in that. So, I'm really proud of the fact that we as a trust, and the part that I played within that, in getting it in front of fans, because it was so important to the club that we did.
Which, to go back to my previous point about seeing fan ownership as the ideal, but actually this is the ideal of making the club so investable that genuinely credible people want to come in and take it somewhere. And in some ways, maybe that's the perfect scenario.
Well, I mean, you sort of invite me in there to give a little bit of an appraisal of trust ownership, given that where we are today, that means that it would attract people of this ilk to believe in the club. I think the first thing I would say is, and I need to start with this first and address it head on first, so that people don't accuse me of spin, because I've had that accusation quite a bit over the years. The first thing is we under our ownership have never achieved our number one objective of getting promoted back to the Football League. And that will always be, I'm sure, for all of us involved in the trust over the years, whether you're just somebody who's contributed to it as a member in terms of paying your subs, or whether it's people who've been volunteers at the club, or whether you've been on the board or been as involved as I've been. That will always be, for me personally, one of the biggest regrets of my life. And we've come close several times, but not to be an excuse, but a reason. Because I don't like excuses, but there is always reasons. We've never had the biggest budget in the league. It's never been a level playing field, the National League. You're up against teams that are spending a hell of a lot of money, and you can't come out at the start of the season and say, do you know what, our budget's probably in the range of somewhere from 6th to 8th, or 6th to 12th or something. Because you've always got a chance of, we've always had a chance of getting promotion, but it's never been, do you know what, we should by right have got promoted because we're spending the most money. And in the 9 years that that we've sort of run the club, I think we finished with 98 points once, albeit, that Dean Saunders sort of pulled together most of that team. And that 98 points actually is still the highest total in the history of the top 10 divisions of English football never to be promoted. But anyway, so that's the football side. But if you take it away from sort of the football side of things, we took over a club that was dying on the side of the road. Every fan contributed to this, and I'm not talking about, this isn't my story, this is the trust story. But we took on $500,000 debt as fans. We took on annual losses of £750,000 a year, and we got rid of all of that within 3 years. We then got the racecourse. We've got the racecourse back, into effective community ownership with a 99-year lease. We've put on concerts. We brought back international football to the racecourse. Back in 2017, I was one of 3 of us who went down to the National Assembly and started off the Western Gateway project that I'm pretty sure is going to, the land behind the Cop's been bought. I'm pretty sure is going to end up in a new 5,000-seater stand on the Cop. As a fans group, we've done all that, the Groves, and the concert, and a myriad of other things. Just bringing the racecourse in brought in another loss-making business that we had to turn around, an extreme more cost. So we should all, as a fans group, be really pleased with what we've done. And even after a pandemic, where we've barely been able to raise any income for 9 months, here we are. We're going to pass on a club that's got cash at bank and is debt free to philanthropic international megastars. I'd say that's pretty much job done.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that as well they don't inherit debt means they don't have to waste their initial investment clearing up the problems they inherit. They have a clean slate to get going. So again, that makes the club extremely investable.
Yeah, absolutely. And, credit to the staff that we've got at the club, and credit to all the volunteers that we've got around the club. You look everywhere, your DLO voluntary, IT with Glyn Williams, what a fantastic job he did at the Zoom meeting with Ryan and Rob, by the way, and with the streaming work to get games streamed. Voluntary, directors voluntary, media team voluntary, and you can keep going, across the piece. And because we've been so lean and mean, it's been our competitive advantage. But it also means that they've got very much a blank slate to come in, and if their intention, which is their intention, to turn us into a global brand, and they need to grow that that organisation, then it gives them a great starting point from which to do it.
Absolutely right. You said before that you've been impressed by them. They certainly give the impression from the outside that they are very much hands-on, taking this and running with it. You've enjoyed doing business with them both, I think, haven't you?
Yeah, I think what most of our fans have only just seen, I've seen either their Twitter posts or what was the great, you know, they saw them at the Zoom meeting and talking up front, which was great. And they've also seen, you know, the very edgy, but of course the people at the Zoom meeting was just the trust members, not the thousands of Wrexham fans across the world. Or they've seen the really edgy and the fantastic video they put out on about Ivor Williams, and they asked me for how to say Ivor Williams, so they got it right. So I helped them get that right. But the so people have seen that side. I've seen something else as well, and a few others have too. Is the very first time that we met them. And I talked to them for the first time. One of the things they said, they've always been really humble. They said, we're big sports fans, but we don't know everything about football. And we need to get people around us who do. And that from day one really impressed me, because it said, look, these are two people who really, you know, Rob built up a gin business and sold it for over 600 million. You know, a key part of that business. So it shows you what they can do, but to come in on day one and be really humble about it and not say, look, in and we know all how to run a business and how we're going to do this, that and the other, I think was a really good start. The other really interesting things that people may not have thought about or may not know, two things I would point out about these guys. The first thing is, had they gone for another club and bought a club out of private ownership, you know, they could have just done that and money talks and do it in the background and then announce one day that they were the new owners. Wrexham, we're a bit different because we're community owned, and therefore they would have to put themselves up to scrutiny from the supporters, and know that they would have to go through a process whereby people would vote for them to for their proposal to take effect or not, and that hurdle rate is not like a 50%. It's a really high 75% of people would need to vote yes. So with their reputations, they've really stuck their, you know, been humble and stuck their reputations on the line that they could be turned down through this process. So, you know, not a lot of people have really thought about that, but it's a you know, it's the measure of the men that they've been willing and humble enough to take that risk. And secondly, one of the things that they did, so we made the announcement on Monday, and one of the things that we agreed and that they did on Monday, so within 5 hours of that announcement going out, they'd spoken to the chief exec and the leader of the council. They'd spoken to the CEO of our main sponsor. They'd spoken to the manager. So they, even on day one, just a few hours after, you know, not yet even owning the club, they're introducing themselves to some of the key people around the club. And I think that shows not just how they want to be part of the community, but they're going to do things in the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I must, you know, from my knowledge of Rob McElhenney, because I'm one of the bands which actually knows him much more than Ryan Reynolds. I've watched Deadpool now, and it was good. I liked it. But my knowledge of Rob McElhenney on Twitter, he and Caitlin Olsen, his wife, who's also in Always Sunny, of course, you know, you see them often. They're clearly community-minded. They're clearly right-minded, if you will, and aware of the needs of other people and support really good causes. And So again, they've seen a club which is, like you say, a community-based club which does good things in the community, good things for people who come to the ground as well, and that all fits in nicely with that idea that they want to build something rather than just come in, like you said, and just buy any club and take it as where they want to go.
Yeah, and I think this, that part of the discussion plays really nicely into the why Wrexham.
Yeah.
It's always been the question on people's lips, and people got a glimpse of it at the supporters meeting a week last Sunday, where where they set out their vision. I have my, even from day one, even before I'd even met them, their advisors were well briefed. And by the way, when I say doing it in the right way, the people that they used to find the club that were going to fit them are, if you like, right up there in the if you were going to go to an agency to find you a club, the premier agency, perhaps in world football, it's the one that they've used. So if you think about why I was so I don't want to use the word keen, but so confident in who was approaching us from day one, it's because it was them, because they've bought and sold Liverpool, right? Crystal Palace, Roma. You look at the big deals around the world, and they're involved in it, and they know everybody.
Well, hopefully we'll be sooner rather than later be out there in Wrexham, having a drink with the supporters and hanging out, and we have all sorts of fun shenanigans and plans in our back pocket. So yeah, we're hoping to see you all soon.
Those guys, the big why question, and for me, I think they're very talented people. They've made a lot of money in their careers, and they're ready to have some fun, and they love shaping something. And you've seen that in some of their business ventures as well as their programs. But the journey was almost as important to them as where it is that they want to end up. So, they could have come in and bought a club, I've no doubt, several leagues higher than where we currently find ourselves. And they could very well have done that. But then they would have missed out on the journey. And it's the journey that's really important to them. And you may have seen some, and Steve at ICS told me that, and us that from day one. So you can. I've seen quite a few things out there around the documentary, so I should touch on that. That they're doing this because they want to make a documentary. I don't see it in that way at all. What I see is some guys who want to do something special, shape something, but then document the journey, because it will do two things. One, it creates a record of what's happened, but two, if your intention is not just to leverage and build a club in a locality, in a region, and I think we should come back to that question as well, and the potential of the club, because I think that's really important. Let's come back to it. But if you want to build the club at on a global and an international stage, and build the brand, how better to do it than to document the journey? And I think that is one of the ways in which they can leverage their fame, leverage their pull to start to build the brand on an international stage, which can help drive more revenue, which can help propel the club forward.
I mean, yeah, I don't follow the sort of arguments that people make of they're only interested in it because of a documentary, because it seems to me that a documentary would be pretty small fry for them. I mean, Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool. Making a documentary isn't something that he'll be desperate to do to improve his career. So yeah, I'm a bit confused by when people suggest that. Although I do applaud anyone, even though I'm delighted with the takeover. I do applaud people who want to have a sort of healthy skepticism in a way, because I think after what the club went through, it is good to at least you know, to always want to hold people to account, if you will, and ensure the best is done for the club.
Yeah, and this what's been put to the what's been put forward, I think, does that in many different ways. What I would say is, in life there are only two guarantees, and those are death and taxes. So what I'm about to say, those are the only guarantees in life. But what I would say is, if you look at the structure of this deal, is the headline lease of the racecourse will remain in community ownership. So as a supporters trust, we will still retain headline lease, and we will sublet to Wrexham AFC, owned by our McReynolds LLC. So that gives us a level of comfort. We've got all of the heritage piece into the deal, which means, you know, they would require permission before they were to do make any changes in that area. But not quite as much as the racecourse, perhaps, but certainly another key element to this is who they are, because reputation, especially in their line of work, is a very fragile thing.
Yeah.
And you look at some of the actors, you know, the very famous Pirates of the Caribbean actor recently, who's fallen foul of reputation. The impact that can have on somebody's career is quite marked. So you know, there's one thing for certain with these guys' fame and wealth, they're not in it for a fast buck.
Exactly, and it, like I said, it wouldn't play consistently with what's made them attractive to people as well. Like I mentioned earlier, that they do seem decent, right-minded people, but then to come and mess us around doesn't really make sense, does it? So no, you're quite right.
Absolutely. And the other thing from there, if you look at from their perspective, there's a few things in America now. There are football brands where people sell merchandise and things where there isn't actually a football team. So you know, imagine the brand of the third, and I keep using that word, and apologies to people listening, but you know, I'm putting it in the context of what's going to drive our football club forward from a revenue perspective. But if you look at if you look at the opportunity of the third oldest professional club anywhere in the world playing at the, you know, oldest international stadium anywhere in the world, that's really powerful and something that you can hold behind. But take it away from sort of the global and international glitz of this and put it into the region. This has always been my firm belief about Wrexham Football Club, and it's one of the things that I love about it. Wrexham has, especially where we are in the football pyramid at the moment, I think we've got more headroom for growth than almost, if not more than, any other club in the UK. And what do I mean by that? Well, we're currently in the 5th tier, and you look at the land mass around us, and the fact that we can represent half a nation. There's around 900,000 people in North and Mid Wales, and just over into the Marches where we draw support from in Shropshire, that is enough to be able to really grow this football club, to represent all of those people in a way, you know, that takes it back to where it was in the late 70s. That there really is an opportunity to do that, and I firmly believe that there's more growth opportunity at Wrexham than almost any other club because of that. So you know, it could be a really smart investment by their guys, because you know the investment bank that's representing them has been very clear from them, you know, from day one, and they say the same thing to everybody who gets involved in football. You know, you don't get into football to make money.
Exactly, yeah. And yet, like you say, we do have that potential. People talk about, you know, coaches coming from the North Wales coast and trying to draw people in like that. With digital marketing now, you can draw people in from further afield, to streaming and things like that. Allow people to have a bit more of a direct connection. I know a few, if you will, lapsed Wrexham fans who, even before this news broke, were suddenly supporting the club again because they're watching the streams and things like that. And yeah, it's
It,
the
my,
new
my,
normal might suit
yeah,
this
well,
new way. Sorry.
yeah, no, sorry, Mark, but if you go back to, I'm going back to the late 70s, early 80s now, and if you think the sliding doors moment, right? If Wrexham would have had an investment like this back then,
Yeah.
I think, a club needs 5 to 10 years of sustained success to, when it grows its new fan base, to sustain it, in my view. And we just didn't quite hold on to that for long enough. Too many of the players, the really good players, left, and it meant we sort of regressed again. I really believe if we'd have had the right investment at that point, Wrexham could now be, an equivalent club, at least to the likes of a Norwich or a Stoke City. I really believe that we could be and could have been a similar club to them back then. Let's see how this goes. I think their hardest job is getting out the National League, because even under trust ownership, had we got out of the National League, I firmly believe under community ownership, we would have gone up another league again to League One. In fairly quick order, due to the size of crowds, the way in which we'd structured the business, and the additional revenue that we'd have got in would have meant that we'd have been even more competitive from a budget perspective than we are in the National League under our ownership.
I see a lot of people talking about statement signings and speculating about all sorts of star players to come in, and I think I want those people to manage their expectations a bit, because, like you said, the hardest graft maybe will be this now, getting out of the bottleneck that is the 2 promotion spots out of the National League.
Yeah, and I'm glad you've used those 2 magic words, because it's something that I definitely wanted to use it on this interview and get across to people, which is manage expectations. The Rome wasn't built in a day, and by the way, parts of Rome are already built. So, we're not starting from ruins here, albeit, we would like to be, we had an awful season last season, but we're only 3 points off the playoffs so far, and everything's okay off the pitch. But it's going to take time. And by the way, we will not be the only club in the division who's got some money to throw around. You wouldn't believe the amount of money that gets spent in the National League. You just wouldn't believe it. And there will be no right for us to just come in and win the league under Ryan and Rob. So I urge people to give them time and to stick with them and to stick as one team. And just for that 5 minutes when you're feeling really disappointed at the end of a game, or it may not have gone to plan, turn the phone off for 5 minutes. Don't get on social media and break and stick together, because it will take a little bit of time. I'll give you an example of how much money gets spent in the National League. We don't see, I don't get to see every individual's team's budget, but what I do know and what I do get to see each year is the average spend in the division. And the season before last, when Salford went up, Salford had spent over £3 million on their budget in the National League North. And then they brought in Adam Rooney and all of those on top of that when they came into the National League. We had Leyton Orient, who was spending significant amounts of money, and we had a couple of the bigger clubs at the bottom who may not be spending that type of money. But when you get relegated, you think of the low budget teams. But like a Maidstone United went down that season, so we lost big spending clubs at the top of the league and at the bottom of the league. So you come to the start of the next season, you think, thank God for that. And you'd think, what would happen to the average budget? What would you think would happen?
What do you mean?
It'd go down.
Yeah.
You'd think it would go down the following season. It went up by £75,000. So there are a lot of clubs spending a lot of money in this division. So let's manage expectations. These are smart guys. They'll spend wisely, I'm sure. They'll get good people in to help them run the business. And I think the future is really bright. The biggest challenge is getting out of this league, and let's all stick together, for however long that takes to get out of this league. I think the fact that we went through all those awful challenges that we did in the 2000s, and we've been through this period of supporter ownership, but we will still be big contributors as supporters to what happens going forwards. But the fact that we've been through that makes us more savvy than probably as a group now, as all of us as supporters, more savvy about what happens at a football club. So that gives us, I think, an edge over others. But going back to the Rob and Ryan piece, then if you can imagine, we've just gone through this awful period in history of COVID-19 with so many people affected, both health-wise and financially. But if you can imagine a sort of an international superstar sat while they can't film or doing anything else in Los Angeles, and spending their entire time watching videos of Wrexham Football Club and the even down to watching the parade of the 1977-78 season. That's what Rob McElhenney's been spending his lockdown doing. And I know, going back some time ago, Mark, I asked you for some footage, which I passed across. That I don't think you would have known who it was back then, would you?
No, I don't think it did.
I don't think you did. No, that I asked you for some footage to pass on. So
I can't tell you how excited I was thinking that Tom Jones was watching it. I tell you.
Yeah, it's not unusual to get excited, is it, Mark? Sorry.
We know how committed you are to the club. The hours you put in, the love of the club that you have, which you wear on your sleeve. I just want to say, on behalf of everybody, thank you so much.
Well, Mark, it's very kind of you to say that, but I'm only one small cog in a big set of wheels. I've given the best years of my life to the club over the last 9 years. I have done my very, very best. You're not going to please all of the people all of the time. In the early days, I had to do some really things that I didn't like having to do, but to save the club in restructuring and things, I had to do some, not very nice things over the years just to make sure that the club survived. But I've done everything that I could do to the very best of my ability. Did we get everything right all the way along? No. But every decision that we ever made was all done with what we thought at the time was in the best interest of the football club. And you know what? I have been, if you like, for a long time, the person who sort of stood forward and been the face a little bit. And that is going to bring with it criticism and, a little bit of abuse. I don't hold any grudges towards anybody for that at all. It's people who are very passionate about their football club, and they only want what's best for it as well. It would be nice, not to be on the receiving end of that. But I understand that those people, all they want is the best for their football club as well. So there's certainly no hard feelings on my behalf on that score. And I just can't wait for the next chapter. And my journey started not 9 years ago, but in the late 70s when my dad carried me over the turnstiles and took me into the ground, and when Wrexham scored, threw me up in the air. And from that moment on, it started a love affair that will last the rest of my life.
Oh, fantastic. Spencer, thank you so much for joining us, and maybe in a few months' time, I'll get you on purely as a fan to talk about good experiences at the racecourse and cherished memories. But Spencer, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Mike.
Doug Williamsday. I'm here speaking about Ryan Reynolds taking over Wrexham. I think it's wonderful thinking that's for a small town and getting us onto the map. If it's all true, there's a certain buzz around the town and around the surrounding areas. And yeah, hopefully it all goes well and get a European force win.
Yeah, so Spencer Harris there. Yeah, he had a lot to say, but what a wonderfully detailed description of the takeover process. We'll be talking about our opinions of it in a moment, but James, I feel that you are somebody you can chip in as well as the man on the Zoom call. What was that evening like for you?
Yeah, very surreal, really. I mean, during the process, obviously, as a board member, we got to meet Rob and Ryan on the Zoom call a little bit before that. So I got over that sort of weirdness of seeing someone that I've seen on a big screen talking to me on a little screen. And I've been asked to do the presentation across for the WST AGM and the SGM previously, so I was asked again to do this, which I was more than happy to do, because obviously it's difficult to get questions coming in as you would do, if it was in the Centenary Club and at a mass meeting. So yeah, I sort of got we got advised on roughly what the process was, and then it was just I didn't really have time to think about the situation, because I think there was something like, before we even asked for questions, there was 200 questions came up, and then another further 500, I believe, throughout the call. So my role was asking a question, filtering through these 700 odd questions, trying to pick out ones that, I'm sure I missed questions, and I had to sort of, has that been asked, or has that sort of been answered, or does that amalgamate with another 3 or 4 different questions? Because everyone had, there was some great topics covered, but it was that was the sort of the concentrating and make sure that flowed, and made, as it got to the end and I'm running out of questions, it's like, right, I know I've got an hour to fill here, so I've just asked them a question, and I'm just gonna have to try and frantically find another question, so it doesn't look like there's any gap. So yeah, it was time pressured and entertaining in that side of it. Hopefully it came across all right, and as much as we could get answered in the time frame, did so. But yeah, I don't think I had a chance to think about it really. It was sort of like I started, and then 2 hours later I was like, right, get me to the fridge, let's find a beer.
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. You were the smoothest person on earth. I'm telling you. You wouldn't have thought all that was going on in the background. It's you look like you were having a stroll in the park.
Well, that's it. I can confirm though, if whoever spotted the instrument in the background, it was at my mum and stepdad's house, because I'd moved house, so I've got no internet. It's not actually a lute. Apparently, it's a mandolin. just to clear that up. And no, I don't play it. I haven't got a clue. I'm not musically talented.
If those two can buy Wrexham Football Club, anything can happen. Start taking the lessons. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. It was, and they certainly came over very well. I mean, I know you'd had that opportunity beforehand, so if you maybe start looking at what we think of this takeover, they've made a very good impression, haven't they?
Yeah, I think I've seen Spencer describe it in one of his interviews that they're very normal, down-to-earth people doing extraordinary jobs, I think was the phrase he used. And I think that sums him up. It didn't feel like I was talking to, or they were talking to us as, high mighty celebrity talk. They're very down-to-earth, like to take the mick out of themselves, and, are obviously serious business people and have a serious, want this to work, but also that they'll fit right in, and there's no airs and graces. That I generally believe they want to have this pint with fans and integrate and be part of the journey of Wrexham, and not, like as they said, not their own journey. I'm glad it's gone through. I think it's a once in a generation, well, not even generation chance, is it? It's once in a lifetime chance. It always does seem it's another club, why not us? And, or you've seen the money clubs come through since we've been in non-league, your Fleetwoods and Forest Greens that spent Crawley before that, Salford to a certain extent. It doesn't really happen to clubs that have got a little bit of history. There's been this horror stories of, I think Notts County, for instance, when that investment going on. But there's also Abramovich at Chelsea and the Sheikhs at Man City, where different ball game, but they've positively impacted their club. I think for Wrexham, I think it's been great. The fans, pat on the back to everyone, because it took the fans to save the club from unscrupulous owners. And then, obviously the WST has been the custodian, but it's the fans that have got this club to this position, and they deserve, I think, with all the turmoil. We've had some great historical moments, and we've had some great moments amongst the turmoil. The turmoil, obviously with the couple of cup wins and bits and bobs. But I think this seems. The reputation of these two guys and the way they're talking about it, it seems, as a legitimate chance as we're ever going to get of having owners that want to do it. If they make a bit of money and they get some more fame off the Netflix, Wrexham's going to benefit. I mean, Wrexham's famous for 1992 Arsenal game. You don't make any money off that. It gets brought up every time the cup, FA Cup starts up, or someone gets a big win over a giant killing and stuff like that. But that's, Wrexham needs its next step now for this generation to see, because obviously you're a teacher in the area, and you've seen the pupils go over the last 10, 15. Most of them will have never seen Wrexham in a league as a league club. We've both had that privilege, and we've both had the privilege of seeing myself and that 90s team and what that did. So let's bring some great. I think this is a great opportunity, and I think they're smart businessmen, and I believe they've got every good intention. I mean, just thinking back to a story that Rob was actually telling us about when he spoke to us on the call initially, and going back to that working class background and his first game. He's a big American football fan, Philadelphia Eagles fan, and he was saying, the stadium was a little bit decaying, a bit like ours. And he remembers as a 7-year-old going to watch his first game and queuing up to go to the toilets. And he got to the front of the queue, and basically it was a bin, and that's what you had to go in. Yeah. And he remembers being terrified as a kid and refusing to go, sort of thing. I was like, well, wait till you get into the Eric Roberts and see what you've got, what you got to battle with there. But I think that they have that vision, and then he talked about that and following the team all the way through to eventually getting their Super Bowl and the stadium developing. I can see that there was a twinkle in his eye, and there was something in his voice that's what he wants to do with Wrexham, and honor the history, but very much improve the journey for the fans on the pitch and off the pitch, as well as in facilities wise. I think that's a great analogy of what you used.
Well, I think maybe we should honour the history now as well, because of course the reason we are in a position to have this happen is because the club, as you said, was saved twice, and the trust eventually were able to step in and take control. And the man who was spearheading that, of course, when we did take control of the club, was Richard Owen. And I was lucky enough to catch up with him and hear what he thinks about what's going on right now.
And when you go back and you watch the old footage from 77 and 78, and you see how packed that place is and how crazy the supporters are going, and it reminds me of my experiences watching the Eagles, the Philadelphia Eagles, which is American football, and I wanted to feel like that again. So anything we can and have to do to make that, once there's a vaccine for this goddamn virus, that we can pack that stadium again, we're going to do it.
Well, Richard, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, it's brilliant to speak to you. When the initial vote, just on the concept, would you accept investment, with no notion that there was any interest, came out, I was mortified and thought, well, no, we're turkeys voting for Christmas here. This is foolish. Now, I'm a convert now, because I can see this as that 1 in a billion chance, it seems to me, where they're genuine.
These two guys, well, I mean, incredible, aren't they? You know, they've got a sense of humour. They brought some fun and good spirit to the club already, and the fans. And you know, that's what I'm focusing on now. I think, you know, if they can continue in the way they've started, they can continue to engage with fans, businesses, the town, then I think they'll be a huge success. I mean, clearly, you know, we've owned the club for some years now, 9 years, and you know, it's probably a question for the guys that have been involved all the way through, really. But you know, I think it's with COVID and you know the risks that's brought in terms of not being able to have fans in the stadium and the lack of revenue. You know, it's great timing, isn't it? It's fantastic timing.
And it's a real testament to the good work that's been done under fan ownership. I mean, as to quote Spencer, when the fans took over, the club was dying on the side of the road, and I think that's a superb analogy. And yet now we're investable because we're run on a very secure financial footing, which makes serious people come in, look at us and think, this is a business that I'd want to take on because there's no hidden problems there.
I think the thing that fascinates me from a business perspective is, you know, what do they see in Wrexham Football Club that's of interest that can potentially become something much bigger than it is now? I mean, clearly, there are some structures in the club that mean that they're not starting again. So when we took over the club, you know, it was on its knees. There was nothing. There was a shell, you know, and now we've got this huge volunteer workforce, people who dedicate their time to the club week in, week out, you know, without any expectation of reward. And, you know, if they can tap into that, if they can build upon that goodwill that exists, then I'm sure there'll be a huge success. You know, Kerry Evans and the DSA, you know, have done some wonderful work, and you know that kind of foundation is there for the new owners to build upon. I know, or I read that Rob McElhenney has been in touch with Kerry already, you know, which is a wonderful sign of intent for me. And then you know, already they've kind of done this PR exercise, which is just wonderful, isn't it? I mean, the promotion that Ivor Williams or shall I say E4 Williams have had in the States and Canada is just, I mean, it's unbelievable. You know? Yeah. They must be delighted.
And I'm glad you mentioned Kerry. I thought it was something that impressed me enormously, that in their written statement, the two people mentioned are Dixie, who deserves a mention as a legend, and Kerry. And I thought that was a lovely statement of intent. I can't help feeling that the fact that the club has been outward looking and looking to do things for the community, whether you're a fan or not, has got to be another thing which has massively attracted the men. This is not just a football club, and it's not just paying lip service to the community stuff football clubs are expected to do. There is an ethos of community service at the club.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you know, that infrastructure has been built up. You know, there's a commercial team there now when there was none before. There's clearly work to do going forward, and I'm sure they'll have their own ideas about what they want to do. You know, maybe the Centre of Excellence will receive more attention, more funding go forward. Maybe there'll be other sections of the community they're looking to engage with. Who knows? I mean, you know, I think it's all there to build from, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, absolutely. It's exciting, isn't it? It's to be able to speculate like that on what could happen.
It really is. I mean, You know, we've got the Gateway project with the council and Glendower, which is on the table. You know, and you know that relationship that the trust has with those organisations will be key going forward. So they're buying into something that, you know, exists and will continue to exist. You know, so you know, if they can leverage what the relationships that the trust have to build even more, then that will be fantastic. And you know, personally, I think it's great that WST Assets will continue to own the ground. You know, that's really, really important to a lot of people. And there'll still be involvement there. So, you know, I think that's great.
Put your business head on, and how realistic would it be to scale up the club? So you can tell I watch Dragons Den, with that in a sort of local context, or are we sort of at saturation points in the Wrexham area, and we need to sort of exploit more that North Walian sort of potential market?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, you know, we've always talked about representing North Wales or even half a country, and I know there's fans over the border as well in Shropshire and you know, Cheshire and the Wirral. So you know, as well as expats all over the world. So you know, we've got the potential now to not just focus on that even North Wales community, but something much bigger than that. You know, you've got Tim Hadfield, the Canadian astronaut, kind of wearing Wrexham tops on Twitter. I mean, this is crazy stuff. You know, I mean, who knows where this is going to go next?
And he keeps doing it, doesn't he? That's what I'm quite enjoying with him. He just keeps turning up with his Wrexham shirt on. We're good lad. I've got to get him on the show, haven't I? I've just realised.
I mean, look, I just want to see one of those Ivor Williams trailers in space next time we do.
Oh, I like how you think big. I was just thinking a flag on Mars, you know. But gold reds.
Yeah, let's go into planetary on this. Yeah,
absolutely.
Global's not enough.
Oh, it's exciting times, aren't they? Let's be honest. But I would be utterly remiss of me to get you on here without, on behalf of everybody, thanking you and all the people who were around you, because without the good work that was done to save the club in the first place, we would never have been in this position. So thank you for what you've done, and enjoy the rise.
Well, no, thank you, Mark. And yeah, I'm glad you recognised other people who were involved at that time as well, because there were a large number of us involved in that takeover.
And the idea of packing the race course every week for every game, instead of just when Arsenal comes to town, but when Harrogate Town comes to town, when anybody comes to town, when you're playing, that people are so excited to watch the rise of Wrexham through the ranks of the National League and into League Two. I just get pumped.
Yeah, so Richard is one of the heroes of the saving of the club, and it is, I think, very fair, James, to say that the trust taking over, saving the club and transforming it is very much what's made us investable, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously fans came together not to save us in that initial hour of need, didn't they, and get the money together, and then it's been entrusted with the trust, and I think absolutely it's right to be criticised at times. Perhaps communication has not always been its best asset, and Wrexham fans are so passionate, and Wrexham fans have done so much and always had to fight people. I think there's sometimes there's a little bit of half truths and half myths that get legendary over time. What they've done is they've constantly created a budget that's there or thereabouts for to try and challenge for that playoff spot and be competitive. And above all, everyone in that trust is a Wrexham fan, and it's not very often that certainly in the meetings that I've been in that we get a chance to just talk football. But through this process, every now and again we just had because it's been so many meetings and and that's not even including the ones that the guys who are on the bid team have done. We just had 10 minutes just to talk, a bit like we have today, about your memories of football games and players and stuff like that. And it's, you forget sometimes that these people are volunteers. A lot of time, some of the time that people give up is unbelievable. And I think the trust is going to be looked back on as a massive part of the club's history and what they've done to balance the club from those uncertain times. And yes, it's not been great to be in the National League for as long as we have, and everyone wants more success. But like you said, without the trust doing things and not taking gambles on finances and making sure that we are solvent and in a position. Yes, it sometimes means you can't go and spend that money on the big signing that may make a difference, or you have to sell a player or whatever, or you can't quite commit as much budget to various bits and bobs. But I think due diligence has had to be done over a number of years, and I think people can be proud of what they've achieved.
Oh, 100% correct. Yeah, absolutely. It's something that can benefit, because the nature as well, the outward-looking nature of the trust's stewardship of the club, it's something that will benefit the community and the region as well. And
yeah,
it's an exciting point, not just for Wrexham as a club, but for North East Wales anyway. I would suggest.
100%.
And someone who'd be able to comment on that, of course, is Ian Lucas, who was Wrexham's MP until he retired at the last election, and so I was able to catch up with him earlier as well.
Hi, I'm Joseph Bruno, and today I'm going to be talking about the Reynolds takeover and Robert McElhenney. I think it's great for the Wrexham team, and I think it's great to finally have some famous people recognise a small town, and I'm just really excited for it.
Well, Ian, can I just say thank you for joining us. You did great work, a lot behind the scenes, to protect the club when it was looking to protect itself. And well, now we see this remarkable state of affairs. What's your reaction to it?
Well, I think like everyone else, I was pretty astonished by what's happened. I'm very pleased as well. I'm a member of the trust, so I heard the presentation by the new owners, which was very impressive. And I think that Wrexham has had such a tough time as a football club, for the last 15 years, really, that it was great to have a kind of sunbeam lighting everyone's faces up at a very difficult time. It's such a wonderful story as well. Obviously, it's not just national news, it's international news. And it's a very positive thing for the club. I mean, I think that I voted in favour of the takeover, although I was I'm cautious about these things, because I really know how valuable and important Wrexham Football Club is to people in Wrexham. We saw how close the club came to going out of existence, and how moved people were at the time, and how hard people worked to keep it there. So it's really important that the new owners don't just treat this, as a game. I don't think they're going to do that. I was impressed with what they've said, but it's really important they look after the club.
I must say, I agree. I liked the tone of a tweet you put out. You put tweets out which have clearly been very positive about the takeover, but then also you did say they should remember clubs are for life, not just for Christmas. And I know maybe I'm trivializing this quote a touch, but it makes me think, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. We've been through so much that even though I agree on the face of it, this just looks wonderful and they impress me enormously. It would be foolish, I think, of any club who've been through what we've been through to then assume everything will now always be okay and we've got a fairy tale ending.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a beginning, not an ending. And all football supporters know that everyone wants success, particularly nowadays in football clubs. And it's much more difficult to to achieve than to talk about. So it's going to be a long job. I think that it will be fascinating to see what steps the new owners take. But I think that, the club really has to be in the league. I've been going along to matches before all the COVID crisis hit, and still 5,000 on a regular basis at the racecourse ground to see fifth tier football. That's not where Wrexham should be. And I was the MP in Wrexham when we were above both Cardiff and Swansea in the league, and that we need to have those days back. And there's no reason why that can't happen, given the right sort of management and the right sort of investment and the appointment of the right staff. But it's not going to happen overnight. But it'll be interesting to see the route that's taken.
Absolutely, it's. I think it's important people manage their expectations a little as well, especially because it's very hard to get out of the National League with only one automatic spot.
Yeah.
I love that people are excited. I think it's fabulous, and but when you see the sort of exploitative markets being opened by betting companies about we win the FA Cup in 10 years, we mustn't get too carried away, because we'll then end up being disappointed when we make good progress that it wasn't remarkable progress, if you will.
Yeah, I think most Wrexham supporters have been through enough to appreciate any level of success. Promotion and return to the league has to be the priority, and if that is achieved, then I think that will be a great step forward. And we need to get into a position on the pitch, because football is all about the results. It's a cliche to say it, but it's true. And we really want to see a level of football that is of a decent quality. I don't think we've had since the days of Dennis Smith, to be honest, from my memory. And those were great days. It was terrible off the pitch, with real crisis situation, but on the pitch there was some great football played, very enjoyable football. And we need to see more of that. And I think one of the things that's really appealed to me about the new owners is that, they've got a smile on their faces. Yeah. And I think that's really sent a positive message out to everyone and lifted spirits. And I think that's really good to hear.
Absolutely. When you said about the smile on their faces, you made me think of those times when we were so far from having a smile on our face. I mean, those were difficult days, and there was an awful lot going on publicly and behind the scenes to ensure we even had a football club.
Absolutely. I mean, the level of commitment that individuals in Wrexham showed to the club was, it was astonishing. And I remember, I think the day when literally people are pouring pound coins, not pound notes, I was going to say, into buckets in order to save football club. And it is hugely important to Wrexham as a town, because I knew when I was the MP that the reason a lot of people have heard of Wrexham is because of the football club. Yeah. And that's not just in Britain. It's right across the world, believe it or not.
Yeah.
I've met people from abroad when I've introduced myself who said, "Oh, cup winners' cup" or something when I say I'm the MP for Wrexham. Yeah. So it is enormously important. It's important to individuals, and it can really make people's lives much more positive. And I think that's the reason why people have been attracted by the magic of this story. Right across Britain and across the world, because they see a little bit of light at a difficult time, and optimism at a pessimistic time. So, let's go with it and see where we go.
Well, that's what I was going to touch upon, actually. Optimism in a pessimistic time. I mean, the town's going through a rough period. It needs, I think, positivity. This sort of thing can be good for the region, not just the football club, can't it?
Absolutely. It's it's a tough time, obviously not just for Wrexham, for everyone at the moment. But it's making some of the issues that we have in Wrexham, things like town centre redevelopment and so on, even more difficult to address with the issues relating to restaurants and pubs and shops and all those things. So to have a positive story and also positive national coverage of the town for a positive reason is really important and really good to hear. So for that reason, I think that, we're going to be on, I'm sure it'll be a roller coaster ride. I can't imagine we're going to be going up like a rocket. Yeah. There'll be setbacks along the way, but let's be optimistic about it. I'm certainly optimistic, and investment will be interesting, but also where that investment is going to be, who's going to be involved, all those things are fascinating, and there's a huge amount of speculation around at the minute, and it'll be very interesting to see what initial steps are taken.
It's a testimony, I think, to the way the trust took on the club, that we are investable. I feel as well, not just in terms of the fact that they look to break even, so the new owners don't come in and then have to pour money in. So go on.
Yeah, I actually think the trust has done a fantastic job, and I think that the fact that we were so close to going out of existence, the fact that the club is still there is a testament to the work of the individual members, particularly the board members, and not just the present board, but over the years, a number of different people have given a huge amount of time, effort, and emotional commitment to the club. And that has meant that we now have a club that exists and is stable and has attracted someone to come along to make an investment to try and take us to a level which we deserve. And I think the trust board and members deserve a huge amount of credit for that. And I think they should give themselves a pat on the back and hope that everything goes in the right direction from now on. Yeah, the club has a great atmosphere. That's why people still go. The football hasn't been great in recent years, but there's a very good atmosphere within the club. And I enjoy going there and just meeting the my fellow season ticket holders and chatting about everything. And I always say I've also got a strong commitment to Sunderland Football Club, as I think most people know. And I always say that the despair I can handle, it's the hope. And I think that's where we are with Wrexham at the minute. But there's more hope at Wrexham than there is at Sunderland at the minute. So, there's definitely a positivity there that Ryan and Rob have brought, and it's really good that this has happened. And I think we're in for an interesting ride, whatever happens from now on in.
And I think it's also, again, it's about really trying to at least match resources to the heritage. I mean, the heritage is so rich, so storied, so incredible. I mean, I really think that is worthy of a full stadium. I think that is worthy of people tuning in to the matches from not just the surrounding communities, but all over the world.
Well, it's fantastic for the community that we are able to have this takeover taking place. And apart from what Ian outlined then, we've seen already on a local level, people benefiting. And for example, we've seen about the aviation gin being sent around to different places. So I was lucky enough to catch up with Wayne Jones, of course, the man himself, the landlord of the turf, to ask him about that. I've got to say, firstly, though, my massive apologies in advance. The sound quality is horrible. It's my fault. I thought I could fix it in post-production, and I failed. So I'm going to play what I can of it. And he's a great fan of the club, Wayne. He knows his history of the club, and he's brilliant to listen to. So he's willing to come on again anyway, and I will get him on soon, I think, just so we can have a proper chat. But I apologise for the sound quality more than you can imagine. But here's Wayne.
Well, why are we setting our sights of being the best team in Wales? Why aren't we the best team in the UK?
Well, Wayne, I mean, it's been a remarkable week. But before we talk about that, I mean, you're a hell of a great fan of Wrexham. The amount you put into the club, the lengths you go to follow the club. Firstly, it just feels mad, doesn't it, that this is happening to us?
It feels absolutely positive. I didn't tell anyone family or anybody else next door, and sometimes these clubs need to hand on a favour, and I was talking off, and I guess I need to obviously being the rest of the fan, I'll always help. So very surreal this week. The back there, genuinely shocked, and I'm genuinely shocked for fans. You know, this is as you well know, this is any smidgen of success that may come our way. It'll be a long time to put room to Mr. Nick, numerous advertising, and obviously mold and rings and whatnot. But I've always been supported this with the rest of the job. It's crazy week, especially
No, I mean, it is remarkable. And I mean, it means a lot as well. I mean, for you, you're not just a fan. It's great that you are the landlord at the Turf because you're a proper custodian of history. You know, it's a place where a lot of things have happened. The changing rooms are upstairs. Poor Bert Foster, the guy whose gravestone the Trust's paid for, I believe, died in the Turf. There's so much history in the club, and it's great to have a fan like you there to respect it.
Yeah, well, it's a dream job for me. My parents had a pick up the road from the Turf from when I was a toddler, practically, so I gave it to a young age drinking when I was probably, but my parents were drinking on a weekend back 30 years ago. So for me I was in Griffiths in Wrexham from the days when we got the cotton park back in the 90s, and from there on in it's just become an absolute love of mine. And then Wrexham went travelling, but it's so smooth to the internet, or there was fresh stuff in the 90s, stepping up on the road and whatnot, and walking up to the Harbour Bridge with a flipping out banners and whatnot and things like that. So listen, like I said, it's a dream job for me. I get to speak about Wrexham 53 days to the point where I have to actually ban it from them because it's only their cost. Yeah, listen, it's just the Turf is, as you know, it's obviously the first place in the club, and it continues to be a huge part, and I hope it will continue to be a huge part in the new owners, and I couldn't see a reason why it wouldn't be. We are, even with COVID, we're packed out tonight, for example, for the Heart, so it will continue. I think it's, I can't be honest, I think it's part of the ritual for a lot of people coming to the Turf, so hand in hand with the football on the Saturday, and all the rest continue.
And of course, if we ever happen to have the opportunity to play Chester again, we will beat them mercilessly.
Absolutely. Yes, no mercy.
What we've heard from Ian and Wayne, we've talked about the benefits beyond the football club, really, that will be seen in the community if this takeover indeed can deliver on everything we're hoping for. It is quite exciting, that, I think, isn't it, James, really, to have people coming in who seem committed to the community-based element of what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think it can be understated either that they've mentioned community in their statement, in their presentation, and continuously. I mean, just look at what's happened this week. You guys, a couple of local businesses received the gin gift from Ryan, and then have sold it and then donated the profits to charity. So there's a double impact, isn't it? It's the Aidan Scott, was it the Wrexham fan that put the GoFundMe? I mean, things like that. That's just community benefits, but just globally. I mean, on Twitter, there's a Brazilian Wrexham fan club that's been set up. There's a Spanish one. There's I think it's Chinese or Japanese. I'm not sure. Global appeal. Global people will now be looking at Wrexham And that's not to be understated. If they've talked about doing this documentary and stuff, that will bring attention to the area. People will want to come and visit Wrexham. No publicity is bad publicity and all that sort of stuff. But the community, there will be people coming into hotels to go to the match days from out the area because they'll just want to go and see it. Maybe a chance to come. You might see a Hollywood star there, whether it's Russell Crowe retweeted back at his granddad and stuff. Do you know what I mean? There might be people there, but there's a lot of interest. People will come into the community. They will invest in it. The presentation they did with Ivor Williams and stuff like that. That's there's. I think it got viewed to like 1.5 million times in the first couple of hours. Well, that's unbelievable exposure for a company. And I think, there's others, Macron with the kit and various other people that have built their businesses around Wrexham and invest in employ people in Wrexham. And, the fans and the sponsors have always been passionate Wrexham. You look at the Peter Gwyn Potatoes, and you've got AEC Engineering and stuff like that, and obviously Ivor Williams and the other club sponsors that have been there, Monera Trust, and the list goes on and on and on. Rex Rent and Hayes Travel, of course, have all been there. And
are you on a commission from all of them?
No, I just don't want to offend anyone because they've been so loyal, haven't they? They as fans have been loyal in this poor period. They've been there and invested their money and continue. And I hope they can somehow within this global madness continue to do so.
Well, that's exactly right, because it's a fascinating question now, isn't it? Clearly, they are looking, the new owners, to build this club up into something different. They've talked about putting this onto a global stage. But if you make that change in scale, obviously, you need to attract, well, you would imagine different kinds of sponsors. You need to be attracting people in who are paying top dollar. It's going to be a difficult balance because they're also committed to our local community, how they will do that sort of thing, while also retaining that trust you talk about from local sponsors.
Yeah, it's luckily it's an interesting problem for them to solve, I suppose.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, if I don't know, I don't know the figures, but you say, I don't know, you're looking at 100,000 or whatever to sponsor a stand, and then with their global pull, they can pull in someone offering 10 million to sponsor a stand. Do you know what I mean? Business wise, you're gonna, but it's important that those local companies that have stuck with us. As it is, the fans that have stuck with us, and the 4,500 average fans, or when we play the big, we can fill the racecourse, against Tranmere recently. It's a massive game and stuff like that, and the Salford Boxing Day game come to mind. It's important that those the sponsors and the fans are honoured and remembered that have seen us through the hard times, but can enjoy the good times. And things might change a little bit of price. You'd expect that to go up if you go up through the leagues. That would be natural if you look at other teams, but that it doesn't. Nothing gets forgotten and outpriced. But it's an interesting problem for them to solve. And I'd hope that the companies that have sponsored us can whether it's still being involved in whatever way.
You're right, yeah. Well, I was wondering as well how we'll be viewed from outside. So I've got to get in touch with Alan Alger, who is Best Ways Head of Communications, and is probably the man who knows the most about National League football.
A team that we believe that we could have an emotional connection to, which is aforementioned, and that we believe we could actually help, not just as a club, but as a community. And that it feels like a community we could identify with and a club we could identify with. And maybe a team that we could see, not just, speaking to what Ryan said earlier about tipping the scales, not just win in the short term, but help build out and foster an infrastructure that will succeed long after we're gone.
Alan, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, it's something of a bombshell seeing Wrexham getting taken over by figures like this, isn't it?
It's quite an incredible story, isn't it? And when I first saw it, I think everyone was just looking, well, where's the link there? Where's that come out of? But when you look into the story even more, It's just such a fantastic thing for Wrexham to be involved in, and I think it's that sort of little bit of good luck and good news that's needed at the club after some difficult times over the last decade or so.
Yeah, I mean, you are, in my eyes, the preeminent sort of source of knowledge about the fifth division, and you've seen how the club has desperately wanted to get back into the Football League, and yet that been trapped the longest run by any club in the National League at the moment, the National League Premier.
Well, I think there's a bit of a myth in football that the Championship is the hardest league to get out of and obviously earn a place in the Premier League. It's definitely not the case, and I'm sure many Wrexham fans will back me up and say it's definitely the Conference National, the National League, that is the hardest division to get out of. There's just that one automatic promotion place, and then the playoffs that now extend down to I think, is it 7th place or 8th place? And it's just such a difficult thing because, as you guys will know, and I brought it up yesterday on my Twitter feed, much to the dismay of a lot of Wrexham fans that want to forget the season. But the 98-point haul in that season where you missed out to Fleetwood, some of the football played and the quality of that team would have walked the league in any other season than when you come up against a Jamie Vardy inspired and obviously a little bit of money behind them as well, Fleetwood. So it's been so difficult, but I think there's been different phases to Wrexham's time in this division, in the fifth tier. And first off, there was that denial when I think there was a couple of sort of, was it a 10th and 11th, the first 2 seasons?
Yeah.
And to me, that was when the reality sunk in that it's going to be difficult. And I know sort of Dean Saunders did his best, but that season under Andy Morrell and the way that the team played deserved promotion. And it was, I think that if anything, missing out that season is what's caused the recent seasons of those, double digit finishes again, not finding the net enough and not having the balance in the team. And there are so many different things that have obviously been the club have tried to change in that time. But this is one positive element that you can get behind and say, right now, everyone's pushing in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the buzz around here is phenomenal. I'm speaking as a teacher. The kids in school are just through the roof. Just as a sign outside the football club of how the town's excited. But I was going to say to you about that. Yeah, it's a real bottleneck, isn't it? At the top of the National League, you get good teams who can't go up because there's only those 2 places, only one's automatic. We've seen wealthy clubs, like you mentioned, Fleetwood in the past. Crawley had money put into them. Salford, Forest Green. It's not always been an easy task to get out of that. So, I mean, I'm just thinking of yourself with Betway as well. I mean, will this affect your odds in terms of Wrexham's chances this season or in the long term of getting out of the National League?
I think in the long term, it definitely will. And I think what we've done here is we've waited. We've been a bit cautious. Still 16-1 to win the league this season. Obviously, mid-table at the moment and a difficult run of games. I can't see it being a quick fix, but what I can see it doing is obviously laying the foundations. Now, you mentioned some of those clubs that spent money. I think one of the clubs, Forest Green, you mentioned, it took them about 3 goes of pumping an enormous amount in because they didn't have the right manager at the time. And I'm pretty sure I'm a big fan of Dean Keats. I know he has criticism from certain angles that he's a bit too defensive, but I think if he gets the right forwards, I think he'll play to those strengths. You do need someone that knows the division. He knows it inside out. I think that mainly Forest Green failed with an abundance of cash. I think someone said to me the other day they spent 2.5 million as a budget when Dave Hockaday was the manager there, and he ended up with a job at Leeds. I mean, you're talking about sort of incredible circumstances. I think at least Wrexham will do it the responsible way, I think. And I think that will be key. And these investors, they will have have to draw on the wealth of experience that Wrexham have in the division and look at the good and the bad that's happened over that time. You know, Crawley, it happened for them in a good way because of the amount of cash that was pumped in. But by the time Fleetwood were pumping in cash, it took them 2 seasons and Forest Green 3. So quick fixes aren't solved by an abundance of cash. They're solved by cash with a combination of knowing exactly what's required to get out the division, and I think Luton fans back up on this, an element of luck as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and yeah, especially with these playoffs, one little decision here or there can make all the difference. And so it's important, I think, to get the, like you said, the foundations right here, rather than throw money wildly at the situation, to build a club which naturally over time is bound to get out, if you see what I mean.
You would think so, wouldn't you? I mean, it won't feel like that at the moment if you look at, you know, the recent history, you know, and how long it's been. What is this, the 13th season?
Oh, I don't want to think about it.
and that's it. And you know, we're possibly saying that it will be the 14th or 15th season, and it won't be a quick fix. It won't be a quick fix straight away. But the club has huge potential. It has a fantastic fan base, and I think that the noises that are being made that this is a long-term thing should, I think, give every Wrexham fan that positive nudge that as long as they get behind the team, this eventually will be over. And the weirdest thing that you've seen recently, because there's only 2 places to drop back into the division, is that, you know, once a club gets up, you know, Luton Town were saying 3 up, 3 down for a long time. As soon as they got one of those positions and won the title, they weren't campaigning for it. Now that's the interesting thing, is that, you know, 3 up, 3 down, it might happen, but at least Wrexham will have the foundations that once they do go up, they won't be in any danger of that, and then they can hopefully build on the fact that, you know, what was it? I think League One, was it? You know, certainly been within the last 20 years, 2003, 4, something like that. So,
yes.
So just looking at that, you know that there's potential for the club, and I think a lot of people see Wrexham as definitely top 3 in the Football League, and who knows where this could push them.
Yeah, that's right. 2005, we were in League One, and I like to be pernickety and say that we were demoted rather than relegated because we had a 10-point penalty because board members staged a coup against an owner who was looking to sell the grounds from under us. So I always feel a bit unlucky with that. Anyway, that's my gripe out of the way.
But I do remember that. I mean, obviously, you know, I was working in the what was called the Blue Square Premier at that time, and you know, I'd been in it a couple of years before Wrexham were relegated into it, and then you sort of recap. And obviously, as an Arsenal fan, the one thing that I remember is obviously the FA Cup game from years and years ago. But you know, just looking at that little recent history, and I remember thinking, Christ, this team's been really unlucky in the last few years. And you would hope that, you know, when the big teams drop into the division, it takes 2 or 3 seasons, then they bounce back out and they're almost sort of refreshed for that experience. And for Wrexham, that just didn't happen in that 4th season when it really should have done. And I think everyone knows that it should have done. But football doesn't reward that. It sometimes, you know, it does kick you in the teeth sometimes.
Just a quick question here as well, that, you know, I see a lot of fans getting excited and talking about statement signings. Would you agree with me that that sort of thing doesn't work in the National League? Bringing in a name is not as good an idea as properly scouting quality players.
I think, you definitely need to scout quality players. And one thing you can't do is get into the mindset that a player struggling around League One, League Two will improve for the drop. That's failed far too many times, to mention the handful of successful ones. What tends to be the best way is to look at players overperforming at mid-table National League clubs, where you can attract them because you're the bigger club and the bigger name. Now, recently for Wrexham, that's fell down on one key point, obviously the cash. So you're the bigger club, you're the bigger name, but can you attract them in terms of wages? Now, if you can tick that third box, you can start scouting around the division and making sure that you have those players with potential. Remember, the player that fired Fleetwood Town to that success in 2011-12 above Wrexham in the table came from Halifax. Didn't come from a big club, didn't come from dropping down from League One, League Two. And you look at some of the other players that played around him, obviously Jamie Vardy gets the headlines there, but some of the other players that played around him, they come from places like Southport, they come from places like Alfreton. Now, that's exactly what you need to do. You need to build. And I spoke to Mickey Mellon that season, and he said it was sometimes as simple, and not blowing my own trumpet here, but speaking to someone like me and saying, well, who won the Conference North Player of the Month? You know, we'll get a scout down. We'll go and watch them. Who won the Conference South Player of the Month? Who's performing well in a team that are struggling? Little things like that. And sometimes that those fixes, and we've seen it, and we've seen teams certainly waste money down the years with it. If you can't go for a proven player that's scoring goals in the division, you can certainly look around at players at struggling clubs. When you get all that right, and I think Dean Keats will know exactly how to set up the team once he gets that squad right behind the scenes. There's a lot of player turnover at this level, which we've seen down the years, and you know, I think Wrexham has suffered with that a lot last year. I think there was a stat that I read, and you'll be able to correct me, that there were nearly 30 first-team players for Wrexham over the last two seasons. Now, no team can be successful doing that at all. You know, you need to hit a winning stride, you need to hit a settled defence, you need to hit a settled first-choice striker, and then build around it. And that's the only real way to be successful. So if they can build a decent squad of around 23 players, I would certainly be looking towards that. And they don't need a quick fix. So I would use this season to scout those players, take that time to look around the division, and then build for you know, next season when this money can be spent.
Yeah, the Keats has a good strike record in terms of, you know, sort of spending wisely. And to go back to that 98-point team, and you're saying about bringing in players who had already succeeded or been shown themselves in the National League. I mean, Danny Wright and Andy Mangan up front, and Nat Knight Percival at the back. I mean, it perfectly illustrates your point. I just want to say one final question to you, which really is commending you, to be honest. Your Twitter feed yesterday also, you said it's good news to take over for people like Geraint Parry. And for me, firstly, that's absolutely spot on. And that's why I feel like I can get behind this takeover. It's not people coming in and probably looking to rip the whole thing up and impose themselves on it. It does genuinely seem to be people attracted by what the club is, the ethos of a fan-owned club, and wanting to continue that good work. And I think that's, in many ways, the most exciting part for me.
100%. Now, I mean, I will speak about my experience with Wrexham and then come to Geraint, because he's a huge part of that for me. As a club, yes, you know, as an Arsenal fan, I had Wrexham in the back of my head from the time they entered the division from the FA Cup game. And I attended a few games as part of my role, and I loved the fact that we were coming to a big stadium. And the thing that happens in that situation, and it happened to me over the 7 years I worked in the division, is that from my point of view, I want to go to a big club and welcome them into the league. But you do have to understand that most of the people, including the fan base, do not want to be in your division. You're trying to big up the fact that you've got Wrexham down with you, and all people are thinking is, we want to get out of here as quick as possible. So it's almost twofold, because I got to know some of the players. Had good relationships with some of the players. I lost my famous bet to Lee Fowler about the Brentford away game in the FA Cup that season, and ended up dressing as Rex the Dragon down at Brighton for the first game. And how unlucky were Wrexham in that replay after that? You're talking about ifs and buts that season. But one thing that stood firm throughout that whole thing was any time I contacted the club, and even if it was a massive clubs on a big email like that, one thing stood out is that Wrexham and Geraint were always first class in their dealings, and it was mainly due to him. He would be on the phone, he would be bending over backwards for sponsors, for TV companies. He is the club through and through. And when you get a picture of how sort of fond I became of the club through my interactions with the club, he was a key part of that. If you've got an ambassador like that, I cannot overstate it enough. You know, there were small clubs in the division that you would think would be welcoming of the presence, yet they didn't have half the sort of passion and just complete, I don't know, it's just that love of the job that he has. And he was brilliant, absolutely brilliant to deal with. And I feel that he represented Wrexham so well that people became fond of the club because of it. And, you know, I've still got my Wrexham Dragon shirt now and I'll wear it around the house. And I am fond of the club, but, you know, I've got family nearby. I will always look out for Wrexham's results. And he's part of that. Now, you imagine you do that, you know, 100 times over. I know this story has made it go, you know, completely across the globe. But if you've got people like that you keep behind the scenes, you'll do all right.
Exactly. That is a fantastic tribute to him, to be honest. As long as we keep that personal scale to the club, no matter how well we might do, then it's a great thing. We still got our identity. I must say that Garrett was our main guest on last week's show, and I had to call the show.
Right, to follow in his footsteps.
Well, absolutely. Big shoes to fill, eh? I had to title the episode Wrexham's Superman because there was no other way of putting it. And the first thing I said to him, he immediately corrected me and said, "It's not a job." And I think that sums up how you view it. But yeah, he's a great chap.
Completely. He lives it. And, you know, I really hope that this is successful, and I hope that everything goes right with this. And it will be for reasons like that, and for some of the fans that I met. And, you know, that's a key thing for me, is that those people enjoy it. And you do have a weird thing in non-league, and I'm not classing Wrexham as a traditional non-league club, because, you know, they've been a football league club for far longer than they're a non-league club. So just in status alone at the moment. But one of the things is that once you get that attention, sometimes those sort of key fans that have been there through thick and thin and have stood on terraces at Barrow in the cold and things like that, that you can't marginalise them, because they are the people that kept this club going for this to be able to happen. And I think if you keep someone like Garrett there, he will ensure that those people are looked after, as well as welcoming in all the attention that Wrexham are now going to get.
Absolutely right. Superb, that. Alan, it's always a pleasure to speak to you. And, you know, your words, I think, are something that I'm sure the new owners ought to take on board. Thank you so much for joining us.
You can let them know. Cheers, Mark.
Definitely will. Right, I'll stop recording. Alan, thank you so much. That was just outstanding, that. Thank you so much.
Cheers, Mark. Well, it's you know, I've enjoyed being able to speak about the club again, actually, to be fair. Yeah. You know, I've spoke to a lot of people this week about it, and it was so weird. You were mentioning, like, the kids at school.
Yeah.
My son came down the other day, and he's been to Wrexham games with me, and he does enjoy going there because it's up, as I say, near where the family are. But out of the blue yesterday, I hadn't even told him about this. I'm so busy at work at the moment. He said, "You seen what's happened at Wrexham, Dad?" Like, straight away. So it's great. It is really good.
Yeah. Oh, it is. It's a real buzz. It's great fun. So, and it's the only type of scenario where I'd agree with the trust selling out, because I'm totally behind fan-owned clubs. But the truth is that this does genuinely seem they've picked us because of what we are. So great.
Yeah. And you know, the trust is almost been a bridge to get here, rather than being discarded. And I think that's how it needs to be looked at. But
exactly.
Tough game tonight, though.
Oh yeah, we'll lose tonight. Don't worry.
That was one of the things. Is when the takeover was being rumoured. What was the game that you played? I forget. Was it Maidenhead?
Oh yeah.
It's like, it was absolutely nailed on that you guys were going to lose that, because that's sort of what happens in this division. But look, I honestly don't think it's something that needs to be rushed. I really don't. Yeah. As long as you come out of it all right in the end, then You know, it's a difficult enough year as it is. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll watch on with great interest.
Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, well, thank you so much for this. I massively appreciate it. It's just
Pleasure, Mark. Any time, and hopefully we can get back to games soon.
Excellent. Let's hope so. Cheers.
Right, take care. Cheers.
Angie.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I don't know how you can own a team. The team doesn't belong to us. The team doesn't even belong to any individual. It belongs to a community. Because long after we're gone, all of us that are on this call, Wrexham will continue to be a club, and it'll be a club for generations of people. Has been already generations of people before us and generations of people after us. So we want to become a part of that story and help to continue to tell that story.
Smashing bloke, Alan, genuine, friendly guy, and sincerely pleased for us, which is nice to hear. Do you think, James, that will be the common opinion across the National League, that they're glad to see us getting a bit of good luck?
I think secretly people will be, chuffed a little bit, as in, particularly some of the teams that have been in our situations, your Chesterfields, the ex-league clubs, but there's always going to be that, look, we've done it with all the teams that have come through with money, and sat with our principals, or we're not that team, but it's football's football, isn't it? It's you're always going to be slightly jealous of the team that you think's got the better situation. I mean, look at Stockport County. They obviously had a big investment themselves, and but I think Wrexham fans generally felt positive for them, and it was great to see their manager come on and on Twitter and speak out for things. So I think it'll be I think players. There's a lot of ex-players already that have put on. Louis Moult is probably another one. Danny Wright, a few others that are still playing. Obviously Louis Moult not at a higher level, but there's players that are still playing around this division that have put some positive stuff on, because I think Wrexham is one of those teams that people remember, but at the same time, there's always going to be that jealousy. And to be fair, we've always been, we never had that. We've still got that big club. Teams raise their game a little bit when they come and see us. Some of the smaller sides, so they'll just raise their game even more now. But,
Great.
Yeah. I think as long I think people like a good news story, particularly in 2020. So I think we'll get a little bit leeway, but as soon as if we start making ridiculous signings or scoring, taking teams apart, then that will soon dry up.
Surprise now to everybody, Wrexham's actually a football team, not just a business. And we actually played football this week for the first time in 3 weeks, remarkably. So after this, we'll have a chat about a rather pleasing evening in Hartlepool. There's a sentence you don't hear every day.
We really do believe, as we said at the start, that Wrexham is a sleeping giant, but, not just a giant killer, but a giant,
Kelleher plays ball upside to the penalty area. Thomas drops down to Elliot Durrell. Durrell in the D, hits it. Yes! Well, it's a goal! Wrexham lead!
We won! That's great, isn't it, James? We needed that, didn't we, frankly?
Oh, those 3 points, after the break, with the COVID breaks and, with ourselves and various other teams, the 3 points was the most important thing. And, it's might not have been the most pretty of ways to get it, although it was a great goal. The 3 points is in the bank is fantastic.
Exactly. It was a poor first half, genuinely poor first half, and we were very lucky to be level at the break. Lainton made some good saves. There were a couple of decent chances off target. I mean, to be fair to us, I don't think we defended that badly in terms of actual penalty area defending. There weren't that many really clear-cut chances. Lainton made a good save from a shot from outside the box. He made a good save from a shot about 15 yards out. The guy was in space. He should have done better. And there was the header over the bar. And those probably were the only three proper chances they had. But having said that, we weren't getting close enough to them at all over the pitch. and it was poor, really poor the first half. We were lucky. Having said that, the second half, we immediately stepped her up. You could see Keats had been in about him and told them, this will not do. We didn't come here with that sort of performance in mind. We were supposed to get close to them. We were supposed to press, and we were supposed to pressure them. And the improvement after the break was massive. We pressed. They were just knocking it around the midfield in the first half, and we were sitting deeper than them. In the second half, we were in their faces. They had no time in midfield, and we were troubling them. And quite frankly, I wasn't surprised when we scored. Such was the step up in quality, and we could have got more after the goal. Last 15, it was we were clinging on, but that's not. That happens when a team decides it's late. We should throw in the kitchen sink at you. Sometimes you just have to grit your teeth and fight it off. And to be fair, although it felt very nerve-wracking watching it, but to be honest, apart from that weird scramble where the ball hit the post, they didn't really create all that much to trouble us. So pleasing to get 2 consecutive clean sheets when you consider that in the last 2 games we let in 4 goals.
Yeah, that's another positive, isn't it? And if you look back at the result on paper, then you've had a 1-0 win. As I said before, early in the show, it was if you get that 95th minute winner and stuff, you forget the rest of the game. And we've had a bit of a decent goal, or it wasn't 95th minute in this case, but all you look at is you got a clean sheet, you got 3 points, and I think, like you said, the most important thing was that step up in the second half. There must be pressure on the players because going back to the takeover a little bit, they'll know that there's a global audience perhaps watching them, and that's a little bit of added pressure. But also, it could be seen as a positive. It's an opportunity to go out there and show yourself, and so it's been stop-start season, hasn't it, with everything? So it must be difficult to actually get into a rhythm of play because, players always say that, when you're into a season and you get that first 10 games of the season, you can see where you are. Well, we haven't even had that 10 games of the season, and we've stopped already a couple of times. So it's difficult. So the most important thing is getting those 3 points.
Exactly. It was pleasing for me, like I said, that when we were forced back, we defended it well. We also conceded a hell of a lot of set pieces in the final third, corners and free kicks. And we defended them well, which is gratifying considering the fact that we've let so many goals in from corners. It was the one that
absolutely.
That was a bit of a scramble.
Me and you have several conversations over the years about Wrexham and set pieces and defending it, and this season has been so. That's good. That's good. Particularly with, I suppose you'd say, Pearson missing still, who is your sort of typical old style centre half, get your head on it sort of thing. So that's great to see. That we can contain a bit of pressure.
Yeah, apart from one at the post, and every team's entitled to have a set piece against them where there is a chance.
Yeah,
the other one that caused much panic was soon after that, Leighton missed a corner, which I don't know at the time. Certainly, I noticed that all his teammates were shouting for a foul, but he wasn't. And looking at the video, it's hard to tell, but I don't think it was. I think he just did misjudge it. But we still dealt with that. We didn't get a shot off because of it. So, yeah, we dealt with those well. The other thing I really liked was, up front, Kwame Thomas was outstanding, I thought. Absolutely outstanding. And I've seen, his performances so far, I can see bits of his qualities. I think we've got to remember that a lot of these players, like you said, they're not even 10 games into this season. The pre-season was quite quick. And before then, they had a long layoff, and quite a few players we'd bought hadn't played all that much last season. So people like Thomas are still probably lacking a bit of match sharpness, but that was a proper all-round target man's performance. Even when we were playing badly in the first half, everything stuck to him, and he wasn't losing the ball. I'd love to see his pass retention statistics because he was holding on to it even with no support, feeding people in. He was constantly beating the centre-backs in the air. That was when we were playing badly, and we had a lot of poor service at him. And in the second half, when we got better, got closer to him, it was no surprise. Like I said, I felt that we scored. It was no surprise that he got the assist because when we were able to get higher at the pitch, he was getting into the box and he was finding teammates. And it felt like a matter of time before one of his layoffs was actually capitalised upon. And then Ponticelli, another sent for 2 minutes. I do think our season, to an extent, revolves around him getting up and running. And, he looks lively. Only had one half chance. But, he's got the minutes under his belt. And, if we can get those two firing like that,
I think... Yeah, I agree. I think with Ponticelli, we saw enough glimpses of it last season. He's, he's like a Jack Russell with a chasing a ball. He just doesn't give up. He's that type of striker, isn't he? He's got pace. He's a young lad and he's developing into the senior level. But I think there's enough there that if we give him a run, I think he'll come good. I think he was an intelligent signing and a good one to get over on a long-term contract because there's some talent there. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's for me, we just need to get more service and consistent service up to the forwards and create a few more chances. I think that's probably the fans' biggest moan is just getting a few more chances. And we don't need to be hitting teams 2, 3, 4. But I think a 1-0 result is a great result. It's 3 points. But I think just troubling the opposition defence a little bit more. But it's all about service, isn't it? But yeah, you're right, Kwame Thomas. There's definitely glimpses of what could be a great target man and partnership up front.
So it's a nice way to end off our bumper edition, really. We got all this good news, and then even the football went well. It's been great chatting to you, James. We'll finish her off in the traditional manner, of course, with the Jay Harris Hollywood send-off.
This is Jay Harris, and you're listening to Dragonheart Radio.
Thanks very much for watching. Please subscribe as well so you don't miss out on any of our content, and click the bell to get notifications.